which. So again, this morning I want to say I am grateful to my Creator for being here with you and the opportunity to share with you, and I'm also grateful to the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish peoples on whose unceded territory I am grateful to be allowed to speak with you, and grateful that we have the opportunity to meet. Thanks to them and to Spirit for being here. I'm going to begin with a couple of brief readings from the narrative of Jesus' birth. We already read together, or heard, and responded to Mary's song, in which she said, God has lifted up the hungry, lifted up the lowly, and brought down the powerful. And this is my gratitude that this has come upon me. And at the time of Jesus' birth, we hear from Luke chapter 2 that in those days Caesar Augustus declared that everyone throughout the empire should be enrolled in the tax lists. The first enrollment occurred when Quirinius governed Syria. Everyone went to their own cities to be enrolled. And since Joseph belonged to David's house and family line, he went up from the city of Nazareth in Galilee to David's city called Bethlehem in Judea. He went to be enrolled together with Mary, who was promised to him in marriage and who was pregnant. While they were there, the time came for Mary to have her baby. She gave birth to her firstborn child, a son, wrapped him snugly, and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the guest room. And next piece I'll read is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 2, beginning at verse 13. When the Magi, or wise men, had departed, an angel from the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod will soon search for the child in order to kill him." Joseph got up and during the night took the child and his mother to Egypt. He stayed there until Herod died. This fulfilled what the Lord had spoken through the prophets. "I have called my son out of Egypt." Some people, this time of year, say Merry Christmas. And some say Happy Holidays. And some say Happy Advent. But not very many of us say Happy Advent very loudly outside of churches. Mostly because people don't know what it is. And there's a great controversy about putting Jesus back in Christmas. One of my seminary classmates, my neighbor, posted something on Facebook yesterday in which he said, if you want to put Jesus back in Christmas, house a homeless person, feed a refugee, help make peace in the world. That, for me, is the crux, I think, of what I believe about Christmas. And I do that from a place in which I'm caught in a tension between Christmas and Advent and all of the lights and the joy and the songs and the scripture readings and all of that are a little harder to penetrate. So for me, I am a son of a pastor who always bah humbugged his way to Christmas. We were never allowed to put up a Christmas tree until Christmas Eve. He spent most of Advent arguing with church musicians and other people in church about why we didn't sing more Christmas hymns during Advent. And I never really understood that, even necessarily as a pastor, until last year when my kids were finally old enough to really buy into the Santa train. And I felt some real empathy for my dad in a way I hadn't before, because when I was a kid, we used to get the service merchandise catalog every year. And it was filled with this toy section. And I would go through and I would circle all the things that I wanted for Christmas. And last year was the first time my kids really got into that. And they were excited about what they were going to get, and excited about what they wanted, and what they thought they were going to get, and what they thought they should get. And I went really quickly from watching all of these Christmas specials that are even really great, smart kids in these cartoons, like Arthur and Curious George, who all of a sudden, their parents are more concerned with getting them the right gift that they want than with actually teaching them or listening to them, to having kids who are more concerned with what they wanted than actually learning about what it was, and really understood. And so my wife and I were just frustrated and floored, and finally, the week before Christmas, we haven't really connected to a specific congregation in the 2 years we've been in Canada, but we worship here and there. The week before Christmas, Lauren said, okay, we're going to church on Sunday, and we're going to talk about God, and we're going to talk about God and Jesus every day until Christmas. And so we went to church that Sunday, and it was great, and we were talking about Christmas. It was the Sunday before Christmas, and then at the end of the service, I don't remember exactly what the pastor said, but all of a sudden, Santa Claus came into the sanctuary. And my wife just looked at me, and those of you who know Lauren will know that. She was so mad that we had tried to find that deep, enriched meaning beyond the commercialism and the acquisition of stuff, and still found the same thing here. I say all that because where I have always wrestled this time of year is that I am not a stickler so much for when we sing Christmas songs. I am not someone who says we can't enjoy Santa. I am in fact someone who finds deep meaning in the fact that people who aren't Christian relate to practices associated with Christmas. And one of the things that I really love about Christmas is that it speaks to a time in Christian history where we weren't trying to assert Christianity over above the culture of the people, but trying to find ways in which Christianity worked with the beliefs of the people. For those of you who don't know, scholars are pretty sure that Jesus was not born in December. There's a pretty good consensus that he was probably born in the summer months. December might coincide more likely with when the Magi visited, which would have been when he was 2 or 3 years old, probably. Historically speaking, not necessarily according to how it's written down in the gospel, but what scholars think about the historical factors of Jesus' life. The reason that Jesus' birth is celebrated and observed at this time of year is because in Europe there were Yuletide festivals. And Yuletide was a 12-day festival that began on December 25th and went through the first days of the new year, during the darkest period of the year. If I'm not mistaken, it was a time of celebration to, in pre-Christian times, a time of celebration and gathering to ward away the evil spirits of the darkest time of the year. And so instead of saying you can't do that anymore, that's not Christian, early Christians went in and said, this is a great time for us to observe Jesus' birth. Let's find a way to work together and have this cultural practice match our own theology. And I love that that piece is there. What Aloysia was saying, so I was trying to remember which one I had been talking about. What Aloysia was saying about nearly every major religious group having some kind of celebration at this time of year. In the tradition of the Great Lakes tribes, winter was the time of storytelling. When it was too cold to move around much, nomadic people gathered together in the hogans and lit fires and taught the children and told stories for the winter months. That time in which we worship together and gather and find meaning, right, to me is very holy. And it's, I find myself less frustrated. So I'm frustrated in September when stores put up Christmas trees. And And I'm not as frustrated after Black Friday when Advent has started with Christmas observations. But I get really mad after Christmas Day when the Christmas station stops playing Christmas music and everybody puts away their Christmas lights. Because in North America in particular, we're so unaware that Christmas Tide is a 12-day celebration that doesn't end on Christmas, it begins on Christmas. And that in our house is a time when it's, again, getting to secular, sacred relationships, we sing the 12 days of Christmas every day for 12 days as a family, or sing a day of the 12 days of Christmas. Just as a way to teach our children that this is a time that isn't just one day. And it seems like not enough to do that. And so getting back to where I started about what I believe Christmas is about, part of why I believe that is so important is because for me, the least important part of Christmas is what we see all around us. It's why I get frustrated with the Christmas trees going up in September. It's the excuse to get us to buy stuff. And I have to wrestle because I'm not very good at gifts in the first place. And then I'm like, I don't want to buy stuff, but I need to get gifts because that's how we show love, right? And I had a friend, another pastor friend, who was posting the other day that she was madly trying to think of gifts for her loved ones, and she got frustrated because she started thinking about how their kids won't be able to celebrate Christmas because they're being kept in cages, and so she just got angry, and if you don't get a gift from her, that's why. And I resonated with that. That for me, what I find most aggravating is not the music or Santa, who is based on a saint of Europe who is understood to have given gifts to children, is not the gift giving itself. It's the I'm going to date myself because I know it's not anymore, but it's the I have to have a Tickle Me Elmo for my kid. As a gamer, every time a new game system comes out right at Christmas and nobody can get it and everybody waits in line. That I have to have this right now and spend this much money on it to get it. That drives people into debt. That continues to further wealth inequality. That continues to make us feel good about systems that aren't good for us. That's what really frustrates me about Christmas. Because when I look at the scriptures and what I understand about Jesus is the three pieces we looked at today are a young unwed mother in a pre-modern society who is reflecting with joy on the baby growing inside of her. And a young man who stays with her despite all of the social stigma that would come to him for that. And then together they go to the town his family is from, and they are there for governmental purposes. And in traditional thought, we think of this as an inn, where they're turned away and have to sit in a barn. In more historical perspective, it was probably a family home that was so filled because people from all over the country were coming to town that they couldn't stay in the family quarters above where the animals stayed. And the animal area was where they stayed. But still, are giving birth to a child and raising a child in the same space, in the barn, in the area where the animals are. To a few months or a few years later, time period is unclear, when the king, a king of their own religion, who serves as king by the authority of the imperial powers, is looking for this child because he's heard that he might be the Messiah. And they are warned to flee to another country. None of this sounds like it's 2,000 years old to me. It sounds like right now and right here. It sounds like what people all over the world are going through today. There's a beautiful painting of Joseph and Mary and Jesus depicted as Mexican migrants running across the desert that an American painter did. There are images from all over the world of Jesus. Lauren actually did an online sermon where she took different images of the Nativity from around the world. Just last week, I guess it's been a long week. That was just last week. That speak to the real places in which we are not just trying to remember hope, but in which we are celebrating. If we were to travel to the U.S.-Mexico border in a week, we would find people who are frustrated and tired and trying to find a way to where they're going. But I guarantee you that we would find people who are still celebrating. And I would guess, I think Mexico is a country in which Epiphany is almost bigger than Christmas, January 6th. So in like 3 weeks, we would find even bigger celebrations there. Even among people who are stuck and hoarded and herded into facilities that aren't meant to hold as many people, who are being given utility blankets to sleep with, you would find a mixture of emotions, but I bet that we would find celebration. Not because people are waiting for Jesus to come save them, but because in our understanding, the idea of Christ, of the word the Bible uses, Emmanuel, a Greek word meaning God with us, is there. In whatever we're in whatever we're going through. The people all over the world who might be struggling with life and death issues, who might be struggling with making it from paycheck to paycheck, who might be struggling with depression, who might be struggling with loss of family members and loved ones. God is with them. And that, to me, is the heart of Christmas, the heart of what I celebrate. And whether I am singing Christmas hymns in the car with my dad during Advent just to listen to him grumble because it's fun, or loudly singing Christmas hymns after they've gone off the radio, I am, in my understanding, speaking to the presence of the divine in our midst, which sets us free and works actively in the world for the freedom and life of